Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another video, and this is another one in my series of 16 in 1975. And this time it's Led Zeppelin and Physical Graffiti. This is an album that I featured on the channel more than I thought I would. I think I talked about it when I was by my local beach, and then I also looked at it in a bit more depth in a separate video, I think. And now it is again. But I felt that I couldn't miss this out in 1975 because the whole point of this series was picking music that really helped in my transition in my life to what I was going through. And this was a very important record. It came out in February, I think, of 75. And I remember 75 was, I'd just done my mock exams at school, and I'd failed in everything. I'd got like 6s and 7s and 8s, so everything was a disaster. I wasn't a very academic person at all. I think I was mildly dyslexic before it had been invented. So I just found things really, really difficult in kind of writing stuff. And so I just found things really difficult. So I just got a guitar, which my dad put in the loft, because obviously it was seen as a distraction, to try and help me revise and stuff. And they got me a private tutor to try and help with maths. It was a worrying time for my parents, really. For me, it was a worrying time for me, I guess, because I had no idea what I was going to do when I grew up. I'm still working on that in many ways. So it came out in February, and I used to had this little transistor radio that was about that big, with one little speaker on it, 2-inch speaker, and I used to tune into. I think the program was called Heavy Pressure. It's it could have been a Birmingham-based program, I think. And they were going to play a couple of tracks from the new Led Zeppelin album, and they played Custard Pie and the Wanton Song, I think. And I thought it was fantastic. And my mates at school had listened to this, and they said it's a cross between Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 4. See, that was the way that people perceive Zeppelin. Like, if you're going to get into Zeppelin, you buy Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 4, because those were the kind of cornerstones of the ones that had the most rock on. Obviously, this was then, the way you looked at things. And I thought, yeah, it's a good point. And obviously, my exams were in June, July, and I was going to leave school in August. The band were playing Earl's Court in London. And I know various people in the Now Spinning Music group went to see them on that tour. And I've seen clips from that gig on the Led Zeppelin DVD, which came out all those years ago now. Jimmy, give the fans what they want. Just release it. But with the exams, I wasn't allowed to go. And to be fair, at that age, I wasn't even allowed to go into Birmingham on the bus on my own. So going to London on my own to see Led Zeppelin was never going to happen. And my friends were roughly the same thing. The reason for this was that Birmingham was in the kind of under the umbrella of IRA terrorist attacks and everything. And we'd had the bombings and stuff in Birmingham. So we just weren't allowed to go into town. But I had this album for my 16th birthday. This is the original album from when I was 16, and it's in mint condition apart from the cover. You can see there's a split down the spine, which has just happened. Don't know how, just has. But it's mine. That's how I know it's mine. It's followed me through life. And to be honest, bits of me are a bit creased and not in perfect condition either. So me and this, I've seen some life. But when I got the copy, I just immersed myself in it. And I think I hadn't got anything else that was a double album. I hadn't got Elton John's Yellow Brick Road or anything like that. So to me, this was, I was obviously buying, Burn, Sabbath and stuff. But this was a double album with so much stuff to explore. I love the cover. all the little pictures and everything sliding in and out, and the mysteriousness nature of Led Zeppelin. And I loved side one. Side one was the side that I played the most, without a doubt. Custard Pie, I love the lyrics, I love the ad lib. A lot of this became, like I mentioned before, like active listening, when I just recorded it into my head so I could play it back in my own time, because this is before tape recorders or anything like that, really, or Walkmans especially. And The Rover, one of my favourite tracks in my time of dying. Side two, Kashmir is, well, there's a video coming out, my top 20 Led Zeppelin songs. You need to watch that to see where Kashmir is. But Kashmir was always magical to me. It was always a song that gave me confidence. It was always a song that lifted me up. It showed me possibilities of who I could be, and what I could do. It helped me with my creative imagination. I could go into other worlds listening to that song. I could close my eyes and just dive into different places, different dimensions. This is, on it seriously, how this album gave me doorways into, and this is before alcohol, and I never took drugs. It just did that. But having to say that, because it's interesting when you visit this, the track House of the Holy never really registered with me as such. In fact, as I talk to you now, I can't recall it properly. Trampled Underfoot, with that funky kind of keyboard. This was available as a single at the time in the UK. One of my friends bought it. Although Led Zeppelin didn't release singles, it was a single in other territories, and that's probably where he got it from. And it got played a lot at the Rio Grande Rock Disco when I started to go out when I was 16, 17, 18, 19. And it was kind of a song that I never connected to either, really. But it didn't bother me because it was Led Zeppelin. I'd got a double Led Zeppelin album. It was part of the story. But I just sometimes play that track and sometimes I didn't. Side three was a lot of my friends' favourite side, especially my mates who were into the more kind of softer side. They were exploring things like Camel and Yes and stuff. And so side three was the acoustic side. I loved Into the Light. And I didn't not like the other songs, but they took longer to come into me, really. Down by the Seaside has got that bit when it goes a little bit rockier with a more menacing guitar figure. And I like that in 10 Years Gone. But so it was side one I played the most, and it was side four. And now I like all of it, I guess. But side four is still, Night Flight is a beautiful song, brilliant. I would class that as a rock song, very un-Led Zeppelin in some ways, quite almost like AOR in places. The Wonton Song is typical Zeppelin, obviously with the riff. Boogie with Stew, I always loved. Black Country Woman and Sick Again, I love that as well. I know I got some friends who heard it once and just didn't like it at all. But I knew then that as much as I was the world's biggest Deep Purple fan, and Ritchie Blackmore didn't know this, but I don't think there was anyone on the planet that talked about Ritchie Blackmore more than I did. But I was very aware that in 1975, at this point in time, and where am I now when I say this? I'm at the cusp of leaving school now. I'm finishing my last exams. There's a sense of trepidation in me that the world's going to change soon. I don't know how well I've done in these things. I didn't find any of it easy. I didn't like school. And I'm now kind of deliberately not wearing uniform properly. I'm getting told off. I know it's time to go. The career office have been in, and they're basically giving us a choice of about 5 factories to go and work in. Nobody from my year at school went to college or university. No one. I think if you were a girl, you were given the choice of cookery or hairdressing. And for the blokes, boys, it was factories. apprenticeships, tool making, that kind of stuff, car manufacturers. And I just thought, I'm not going to do that. So I took no interest in it. I didn't know anyone who went for work in an office either, actually. So, and I don't know what I thought, but I knew that there was a sense that something was changing. And I knew that my dad wasn't going to be letting me just sit at home. But I was also aware musically, because I was buying sounds and Melody Maker, that, as I was saying earlier, I know I've gone a bit off the tangent here about being the world's largest Ritchie Blackmore fan, is that I could not dispute that this part of the year, this kind of cusp of June, July, August, was Zeppelin's. They owned it. That's all people were doing. And I didn't rebel against it because I was on board the Zeppelin train in that respect. Where I lived, the next door neighbour was a bloke that my dad wasn't very sure of because he seemed to have wayward kids. He had longer hair. Their house was a disaster area as far as he was concerned. You know, cars that had engines out. You know the kind of thing. But he played Led Zeppelin through the windows, and he knew that I liked Led Zeppelin because he'd seen me walk up the drive with his Zeppelin album under my arm, and he came round, much to my dad's displeasure, and he said, I thought you might like to see this. And he brought round the Led Zeppelin program from Earl's Court. And he said, I've just come back from seeing them. And he showed me the program. And you've got to try and imagine what this is like. I'm a school kid, right? I'm 16. And the bloke next door is a grown up with kids. And he's just been to see Led Zeppelin. Now, nowadays, that wouldn't mean anything, would it? But I didn't know anybody over the age of my peer group that liked rock music. And here was a grown-up person, technically, because they got a house and kids, and he'd been to see Led Zeppelin. This was a very strange thing to me, you know, because obviously my dad just saw it as like rock music is the end of the world, you know, the worst influence he could possibly have on his son, really. And there was the bloke next door listened to Zeppelin. Of course, in a few years, his sons would rebel against him and listen to nothing but the Clash and the Sex Pistols, which is the way of things. And later on, so would I. But this period, I mean, when some of our friends were like, they were also, you know, applying for jobs and things. Some were getting girlfriends for the first time. And I was just going home and listening to Led Zeppelin. I was just going home to listen to Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti, even though some of the songs weren't always the kind of stuff that I liked them as each song. But I just felt there was so much to dive into, to listen to. There were so many things to explore, so many choices. Each time I looked at it, I thought, I'll play that track. I fancy playing that track and that track today. I just took bits of it. I've always been like that. I've always preferred, like, you know, when the cassette was born and we started doing mixtapes for each other. I love mixtapes. I love the idea of playing different tracks. I've never been that kind of person that's always played an album all the way through. I do that more now because sometimes I just can't be asked to get up and change things around or have records all over the floor. But back then I'd think, what mood am I in? How do I feel? I want to put Kashmir on. I want to listen to The Rover. Biggie with Stew, Into the Light, just wherever I was. You know, sometimes putting the record on from the beginning, you think, I've got to wait another 10 tracks before I get to what I want to listen to. Just put it on. Just play what you want to play. But I've always felt, I knew, even though my favourite albums might have been Burn and stuff, I just knew, I felt it. This piece of work here is epic in proportions. And I just know when Kerrang did its top 100 albums of all time, I thought it'll be Physical Graffiti. That will be number one. When it just will be, because of all the things that have come since or whatever. It's a template, and I love the way that I could see, you know, Sabbath were doing stuff, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, or Sabotage in '75, and of course Purple. There was Come Taste the Band. I'll cover that. Rainbow's first album, lots of things. But Zeppelin had done something that no one else could do. And I remember, I've said this, I think, when I covered it before. It could be Melody Maker Sounds. Those of you who remember, let me know. I was sitting in the car and I was opening up it, and it had a whole full-page spread of Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, because they were massive. And it said something like Karen Carpenter wouldn't last 5 minutes with the Zeppelin song. They just had this image, really. But this album, as I've said, it's like taking your vitamins. It remains an important part of me. Of all the of Zeppelin albums, I play Led Zeppelin 1 the most. But there's something about its stature, the way it looks, everything about it, that reminds me of realizing I was buying something that this is interesting, again, because I've been there, really. I knew at the time, it came in February, my birthday was in March, and I just felt that this was one of the best albums. I was experiencing one of the best albums. This would be seen as one of the best albums ever released. Then. And if you think of everything where I was, did I just see this, it's a new Led Zeppelin album? I didn't. There was something about it even then. I just thought, I don't know where this is heading next, or what new bands are going to come up, whatever. But this is a line in the sand here. And I don't, all the things, I hadn't got many records. I only had records for birthdays and Christmas. So I had a few records, and I just looked across my record collection and just thought, well, these are my records. And then there's Physical Graffiti, because it's kind of like it's a divider. There's music that came out before Physical Graffiti, and there's music that came out afterwards. It kind of felt like that, even though I was like, a huge Purple fan with Made in Japan, best live album ever and everything. But I think what makes this even more interesting for me talking like that is I do not love everything on it at the same degree of each track. As I said, House of the Holy, as I've been talking to you now, I'm trying to think, how does that go? And I've played this God knows how many times over the years. But it was part of how it got me through the exams, and as it got me through to my early years of work. If I think about the tracks that got me there, or gave me the kind of courage and feel for going forwards, it would be the Rover and Kashmir. The Rover, because it had a kind of swagger to it, but Kashmir, because it gave me confidence. There was, as I've said earlier, it was like putting on a force field. Kashmir was, because I'd played that so much that I memorized every drum roll, every drum fill, every guitar line, every riff, every vocal inflection from Robert Plant lyrically. The feeling behind the lyrics, not necessarily the lyrics, the kind of sound of the flow of the melodies. And I had that in my head, so that whatever was going on around me, I could recall it. I could have it playing inside me, and it kind of gave me a wall around me that felt like it was part of me. That might sound completely nuts, I don't know, but that's how I use music. And that song, as it moves towards the crescendo and those parts, just made me feel that, I looked at myself in the mirror, or how I saw myself walking down the street. It was going to be okay. It was going to be fine. So that is the end of this episode of Being 16 in 1975, and it's a look at Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. So let me know what you think of this album in the comments. Where were you when you first heard it? Because you're not all going to be, as old as me. So you might not have ever heard it yet. Maybe you've just stumbled across this. I have no idea what that's like. That's fine as well. And if you heard it when you were 20, and that was in 1989 or whatever, or 1998, good. Let me know what you think. And if you're older, then, I mean, with so much more probably in your record collection, what did you think about it when you first heard it? And what do you think about it now? Is it sitting at the top of the mountain of the Led Zeppelin catalogue? And what songs helped you on a personal level from this album? Is it just an album full of songs, or is it something more than that? Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your support in helping me to create Now Spinning Magazine and make these videos for you. If you become a patron or YouTube member, you'll get to join the Facebook group and the WhatsApp group and talk to like-minded people who talk about all sorts of music in a safe environment. You can also come along to the Now Spinning Arms virtual pub twice a month and get discounts on merch, and of course see all the videos before anyone else. So remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Please take care, all of you, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.